Good Monday afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Kare 11 News Now. I'm Rena Sargentopoulos. This afternoon, passengers are awaiting the reopening of LaGuardia Airport in New York after it closed following the crash on a runway, leaving 2 people dead. A pilot and a co-pilot died after an Air Canada plane collided with a fire truck just before midnight on Sunday. Lily Zhang has the latest.
All right, there's an incident on the field. We're closed right now. Just stand by.
Through radio traffic, you can hear air traffic controllers trying to navigate the situation at LaGuardia. Just before midnight, an Air Canada passenger jet collided with a Port Authority fire truck on an airport runway. The plane was carrying 72 passengers and 4 crew members. 2 pilots died. More than 40 people on board were taken to the hospital. We learned from a source this morning a flight attendant was found by responding Port Authority police strapped in her jump seat outside of the aircraft. Sources also tell NBC News the plane hit the middle of the truck. This caused the officers seated up front to be thrown from the truck. They did suffer broken bones, but did survive. The nose of the plane was low, so the pilots caught the full force of the impact. Another source said a preliminary review shows the plane was clear to land. The truck also had clearance to cross the runway. Passengers this morning were scrambling to come up with last-minute plans to get to where they need to be.
Instead, we rented a car. We're going to drive to Philadelphia and fly out of Philadelphia.
Trying to get to an airport, Newark now, but we got told no several times, so trying to get an Uber has been tough as well. It's just been a tough trip, but we can't wait to make it to where we're going.
A big change today with ICE agents deploying at airports across the country. This comes as the partial government shutdown has caused more than 400 TSA officers to quit. And some airports have seen long lines during spring break. President Trump today thanking ICE for stepping up and saying he is willing to bring in the National Guard if necessary.
ICE was my idea. First person I called was Tom Homan. I said, what do you think? He said, I think it's great. Then I saw today there was some masks on. I didn't think the masks were appropriate. I put out a statement and I asked them, would it be possible to take off the mask?
Border Czar Tom Homan says ICE agents will help with security but will not assist with TSA screenings. The partial shutdown began at the end of January and persists because Democrats refuse to fund Homeland Security unless Republicans make changes to ICE protocol. MSP spokesperson sent us a statement saying wait times have consistently remained under 30 minutes here in the Twin Cities. They went on to thank the local TSA team for keeping things running smoothly. Right now, President Trump says the U.S. and Iran are discussing ending the war after what he called productive negotiations between the two countries.
We have had very, very strong talks. We'll see where they lead. We have major points of agreement. I would say almost all points of agreement.
In a post on Truth Social, Trump confirmed he will hold off on attacking Iranian power and energy sites for the next 5 days. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign ministry denied holding any negotiations with the U.S. NBC's Matt Bradley has the latest.
Well, we just got that new Truth Social post from the president saying that there had been productive negotiations between Washington and Tehran, and that the U.S. was considering winding down the entire Iran operation, and that for 5 days, President Trump was not going to make good on his threats to attack Iranian energy installations, particularly power plants. The Iranians had responded to that threat, saying that they were going to then be targeting power plants and power installations throughout the entire region belonging to the U.S. and its allies. Well, now we're hearing from the Iranians. First, the foreign ministry said they have no information about any negotiations that have been going on between Tehran and Washington. We also heard from Iranian state media saying that this is clear that the president is backing down off of his threats. One news agency said that it was clear that those threats had been hollow all along. Now, meanwhile, energy prices on the global markets are dipping, stock futures are rising, and this ultimatum, which is for 5 days, ends at the end of the week on Friday, which is also when markets close. Matt Bradley, NBC News, Tel Aviv.
The news had a big impact on the U.S. Futures Board today. The Dow jumping more than 875 points following President Trump's post on Truth Social. The Nasdaq also seeing a big boost, rising nearly 500 points. Gas prices at the pump, however, are still on the rise this afternoon. AAA shows the national average inching closer to $4, now at $3.96. In Minnesota, prices are increasing at a much slower rate. Now we are sitting about $3.44 per gallon. That's right around the same average we saw yesterday, and about 1 cent higher than this time last week. Right now at the state capitol, activists and providers are rallying for reproductive freedom. Organizers say Minnesota already has some of the strongest abortion protections in the country, but now they want to shatter the remaining barriers to access. Also happening today at the state capitol, House DFL lawmakers will push for a bill to repeal Cesar Chavez Day here in Minnesota. It comes just days after a New York Times investigation found evidence that Chavez allegedly raped and assaulted several women and girls. Cesar Chavez Day is celebrated on the civil rights leader's birthday, which is March 31st. So lawmakers say they are working to pass that bill as quickly as possible. Tonight, tributes are pouring in for local sports reporter Jessie Pierce. Jessie and her 3 children were the victims in a deadly house fire early Saturday in White Bear Lake. Those who knew Jessie professionally and personally are remembering her. Our Joe McCoy has some of their reaction.
A home struck by tragedy.
It just seems so unreal.
And a press box with an empty seat.
It's going to be really different and certainly not in a good way.
Pioneer Press sports writer Jess Myers still trying to comprehend that he will no longer be reporting alongside his colleague.
It was just a few minutes before the opening face-off of the Wild game that another reporter came and told me, hey, Jessie died yesterday. And just one of those where it's like someone took a sledgehammer to your chest.
Jessie and her 3 young kids killed in a house fire Saturday morning at their home in White Bear Lake. Tributes today pouring in across social media.
She really knew her stuff. She was really passionate about the NHL.
The NHL sharing condolences, saying Jessie was a valued member of the NHL.com team for a decade and that they will miss her terribly. The Minnesota Wild say they are heartbroken by the tragic loss of Jessie and her 3 kids. They say Jessie was a kind, compassionate person that cared deeply about her family and those around her.
She was proud of being a sports writer, but she was much more proud of being a good mom and a good parent to her 3 kids.
So dedicated to both roles that Jess says she combined the 2 at times, interviewing players with a kid strapped to her chest.
The players loved it. They ate it up. There's all these great pictures of Wild players interacting with her little boy. And this just breaks my heart, but I said to her one time, how cool is it going to be for your son when he's a teenager to show his friends those pictures of these Wild legends that he got to meet when he was 6 months old? And, it's just horrifying to think that that's never going to happen. It's really, really hard.
Right now, police are looking for suspects in a Minneapolis shooting that left 1 man dead and a teenager in the hospital. It happened around 10 o'clock Saturday night at an apartment building on 17th Avenue South in the Phillips neighborhood. Officers say they found 2 people shot, a 19-year-old man who later died and a 16-year-old boy with non-life-threatening injuries. Officials say it appears a group of people were fighting in an apartment when someone started shooting. They say, though, the suspects ran before officers were able to get there. This afternoon, we know the identities now of the victims involved in a deadly head-on crash in southern Minnesota. State Patrol says the driver of the transit van carrying 13 people is a 42-year-old man from Lakefield. Officials say Kathleen Johnson, Richard Johnson, Kelly Hargis, and Lindsay Rosso all died while riding in the transit van. Martin Nicholas Hansen, the lone driver in the SUV, also died. It is the deadliest crash in Minnesota since 2023. A new legal battle at the Supreme Court will target mail-in voting. Today, justices are hearing arguments about the federal legalities of mail-in voting, dialing in on the practice that some states have of counting those ballots that arrive at the election offices after Election Day. Now, President Trump is pushing to limit the mail-in system, but some voting rights groups say states should have the flexibility in how to regulate those mail-in ballots. The court's final decision is expected by the start of summer. Well, new this afternoon, WNBA players are getting paid. The Players Union approved a new 7-year collective bargaining agreement with the league. The WNBA Board of Governors still needs to approve the deal. Then the season is set to start on May 8th. Under the deal, the average salary per player skyrockets from $100,000 to nearly $600,000 a season. The minimum salary is now also $300,000. And the best players can bring in nearly $1.5 million per year. Players will also get revenue sharing, a baseline for pro sports. New today, the University of Minnesota Athletic Director Mark Coyle speaking out about the search for new head coaches of the men's and the women's hockey teams. Coyle will be speaking at 3:45, so you can watch that live right here on Kare 11+. Meanwhile, we do know that the women's team will be led by former assistant coach Greg Boom May. He was also the men's head coach over at Augsburg and coached at Farmington as well as Blake. Stick with us. We got more news and weather coming up after the break.